Hello and welcome to my series of conversations with men and women whose ideas, vision and philosophy define our contemporary world. My guest today is one of India's most distinguished politicians. He was one of India's most distinguished politicians. He has now transcended that formal label. He was a member of the Provisional Assembly after independence, a member of India's first parliament. He was a member of the cabinet, a finance minister, a defense minister. He was vice president of India, president of India. I'm delighted to welcome Mr. R. Venkataraman. You described yourself when you were president as a copybook president. Could you say that your years in retirement, in a sense, have been copybook too? What does a retired president do?
See, I strictly followed the rules. I never deviated from them. And therefore, when somebody wanted me to do something, I said, I am a copybook president, I will go only according to the rules. That is how the copybook came up.
But what about sort of, it's been 10, 12 years since you were president. So how has that time unfolded for you?
You see, there is a lot of misconstruction, misunderstanding about the functions of the president. In my farewell address to the parliament, I told them that the president is like an emergency lamp. It comes into operation when power fails, and when power is restored, it becomes dormant. I mean, it is a simile, but nevertheless very sound and proper, because under the Constitution, the chief executive of the country is the Prime Minister. The titular head of the state is the President. The President does not govern. The Prime Minister governs. But the President overlooks the administration and interferes when there is a violation of the Constitution or an impropriety in relation to the preamble to the Constitution.
But apart from the semantic niceties, presidents have points of view, they have perspectives, many of them come with political ideologies, many of them come with political stamps. You had a long career with the Congress Party. Can you just shut all of that off when you're president?
Well, it really depends on the person. When I became vice president and I resigned from all the political organizations. And I did not join any political organization even after resigning from the president's post. I tried to keep myself absolutely free from any political influence on me, notwithstanding my association with so many organizations earlier. It's a very difficult thing, but people who succeed become good presidents.
Were there moments for you when there was sort of the anguish of the heart, which you couldn't articulate because your office was restraining you from doing that?
Nothing of that sort occurred to me.
You worked with you appointed at least 3 prime ministers and worked with so many different prime ministers, 4 or 5, and there were different personalities, and you have in some ways been associated with every prime minister of India, till Atal Bihari Vajpayee and perhaps now Mr. Manmohan Singh. Different personalities, responding to them and working with them in different ways. What was your most challenging, difficult moment with the Prime Minister?
I went through a period of great political turmoil and difficulty. No other president had to face a situation as I had. For instance, when Rajiv Gandhi lost his elections, under the strict principles of the Constitution, he was still the largest single party. And according to British precedent, the largest single party must be called to form the government. The king does not exercise any discretion in the matter. And times without number, Ambedkar has stated that the position of the President of India is exactly ad idem with the President of the Crown of England. I was in a difficulty at that time because of my association with the Congress leaders and all that. I called one of these Congress leaders and told them to go and convey to Rajiv not to stake the claim for the office of the leader. I said that having been defeated, it will give a very bad impression that he is still trying to stick to office.
But would you say that was a presidential thing to do, to personalize the process?
I never used the office for any purpose. I merely said it will be good, that's all. You see, I am not advising you, I am not saying this, but it would be good if he, instead of staking the claim, he himself, you see, voluntarily desists from making it. I told them, you see, there are three options open. He can take a claim, he can, you see, decline after being offered, and the third is himself voluntarily say that I am not staking the claim. Of these three options, the last one is the best.
And he followed your advice?
He followed the advice.
So it was this aspect that interests me, for a president, the personal and the official and the formal. So here was a president using a personal role and confidential advice to avoid a crisis, to avoid a predicament.
The same thing. You see, when VP Singh government was formed, he was elected leader of the Janata Party, but he was the second largest party. He came and said, I have been elected leader by all the parties. I said, I do not care. I am asking you to form the government as the second largest party. The first largest party having declined, I am asking you to form the government as the second largest party. Whether you can do it or not, you can tell me. Others also came later and said, sir, we are supporting. I said, I am not concerned. If you support them, you support them in the House. You don't have to support him to me. He must have the confidence of the House according to the Constitution. And as I said, you see, I don't take notice of your support. You had to put it in the House. Then when Vajpayee came and told me the BJP has withdrawn the support to VP Singh government, I told him, you have given a plaint, you have not asked for relief. What is it you want me to do? He said, it's for you, the president, to see whether they have the majority or not. Then I told him, no, he has been elected, he has been made the leader, the parliament has not yet disowned him or defeated him.
Tell me, these sort of communications that you have with prime ministers, when are they sort of personal communications? When do they become formal communications between a prime minister and a president, between a leader of an opposition and the president? How do you draw a distinction between these two? Because obviously they merge often, no?
I tell him, as a friend I am telling you. The other thing I said, as a president I am telling you. It's an end of it.
So is that distinction in some way sort of formally recorded?
You see, a good president will have to keep these two things apart and should not use the personal thing where he has no rapport with the prime minister. Suppose you see the prime minister is not belonging to your party or is not your friend. VP Singh has been a great friend of mine. You see, I had the advantage of being good friends of every one of the prime ministers who came to office during my time. So I could tell them, you see, this is for your choice, it's your decision and so on, but then this is the thing you must have to look into.
You know, this is an issue that keeps coming up now in India with the sort of era of minority governments. You have been a great advocate of electoral reforms, but just to sort of, before we move on to that, just to try and sort of formalize this issue, So what advice would you give a president? What is the guiding principle on who a president invites?
My practice had been, and my firm conviction is, that I will call the parties according to their strength. If the party with the majority, with the largest single unit is not able to form the government, I call not what the other people will support, the second party which had the largest. See, before Chandrasekhar was appointed, I followed this very strictly. I told BP Singh that you take a vote of confidence because the BJP says that they have withdrawn support. And he took it. He lost. Then he did not advise me to dissolve the House. If he had advised me to dissolve the House, I would have said dissolved, because the Crown is to accept the advice, whether in office or not, of the Prime Minister. Therefore, I would have said, accepted it. But he did not do. He said, I want you to take steps to form another government. Then I called, you see, the BJP. I said, I call you as the second largest party. Will you be able to form the government? They said no. Then I called the left parties, which are the next largest party. And then they said no, they cannot. Then only I called Chandrasekhar, because he had written to me that the Congress is supporting him. I asked him, how do you think you can conduct the affairs of the state with such a small number? He said, you see, Congress has... I said, we'll ask them to give in writing. So he went and got a letter saying that... I did not stop with the letter. I called Rajiv and said, they are saying this. Would you be able to support him for at least 1 year? Then he said, why 1 year? I will support for the end of the term.
You're watching a conversation with Mr. Rajiv Venkataraman, former President of India. Don't go away, we'll be right back after a short break. Welcome back to my continuing conversation with Mr. Rajiv Venkataraman, former President of India. In sort of the earlier part of our conversation, you mentioned the Crown several times. You have been an advocate, as I mentioned earlier, of electoral reform. We are now in a very different India from the time the Constitution was framed. You have been talking about looking at different approaches to elections beyond the first past, the post system. What prompts this?
You see, the electoral system in India suffers from a very basic, fundamental defect, namely that a person who does not have a majority of the votes polled is declared elected on the principle first past the post. In a plural, you see, contest, a man gets 10% votes, another gets 15, another gets 20, another man gets 30. The man who gets 30% of the votes polled is declared elected. He is not a representative of the people. 70% of the people have not voted for him. How is he a representative? Parliamentary democracy depends on representative democracy. That is, in the sense, the man represents the majority of the will of the people. In this case, he doesn't. Very often, in our country, one caste or other dominates in a constituency. They have about 20% votes. All the man does is collects the 20% votes and gets, by whatsoever means, another 10%. And then he becomes a member of parliament.
So how would you change this?
In France, they had the same system. Between 1946 and 1958, when de Gaulle came to power, there were 22 governments in 12 years. Actually, I was in those days Indian delegate to the United Nations. Menon was my leader. We had once gone to the French embassy to discuss something, and we decided on moving an amendment next day in the General Assembly. The next morning, when we telephoned, we were told that the people had left. Why? Their government had fallen. There were 22 governments in 12 years.
Well, we've done better than that.
Then de Gaulle came and changed it. He said if a person gets a majority of the votes polled, he is declared elected. If nobody gets a majority of the votes polled, then there is a runoff between the top two candidates. Not the others, only the top two candidates. And one of them must necessarily get a majority of the votes. This brought about stability in France. All the progress that de Gaulle made were after this electoral change that was made. I have been telling the people for the last 15 years, speaking, writing, crying hoarse, throat becoming sore, nothing happened. In fact, I told Venkataraman when he came with his commission members for a discussion with me.
This is on the constitutional review.
And I told him the first reform that you should do is, you say that nobody will be called a member unless he gets a majority of votes polled. And you change the system as I have said. He tried his best, he could not get it through.
Why do you think that was? What was the resistance to change?
Everybody now gets elected on 30% votes. They tell me, how do you expect me to accept your proposition? I must get 51% votes. See, every one of the parties is interested in the existing chaos.
Going back to this issue of the criminalization of politics, isn't that a major element contributing to the chaos that you described?
No, you have to do this. Otherwise, you see, your constitution will be thoroughly worthless. See, you have a constitution which says a man who doesn't get a majority of the votes in the constituency is a member of the constituency, representative of the constituency. How is it a democratic system?
But how will this address this issue of sort of inappropriate MPs, to put it politely, people who've committed crimes, and people are becoming ministers, even though they have all kinds of allegations against them? How can this aspect of politics be reformed?
You think there is a solution for all wrongs? There is none. There are many wrongs for which there are no solutions. And this will have no solution as long as the present system of electoral returns is maintained. They will never agree. A constitution has to be changed only by Parliament, and the Parliament will not agree to any system in which they have to get a 51% of the votes polled.
So to what degree do you go along with the principal recommendations of Justice Venkataraman's Constitutional Review Commission?
You see, my very good friend, in particular, I don't want to be critical about him. In my opinion, the commission went astray. If I were there, I would have said, don't touch fundamental rights. If any improvement has to be made, hereafter it must be made by the judiciary, not by us, by the politicians. They have spent lots of time is about to the press, this, that, and the other. In fact, the Constitution has been interpreted by the Supreme Court in a very liberal way, including all those things which require, you see, special attention. And you could have left it to them. If there is anything to be done in Chapter 3, well, let it go to court and let the thing.
So what are the other aspects of the Constitution that you would work towards reforming, other than the aspect of the process of elections?
Well, I would prefer a composite government instead of a party government.
So what would be a composite government?
In the composite government, which I conceive, all parties must be represented. The Prime Minister should be elected by the Lok Sabha, and unless he gets a majority of the vote in Lok Sabha, there will be a runoff between the two, as they have in the French presidential election. After the Prime Minister had been elected, he must choose members according to their strength in the of the parties. Then you see the opposition, which is now there, it will be part of the government, the minority. Anybody you see who has more than 10 members, you see, will get one at the rate of 10. Then it will be a composite cabinet. It's a composite council of ministers, not cabinet. Cabinet has some different meaning. Here people will tell me, they are not able to agree. How will they agree in the cabinet? It's absurd. Take the Public Accounts Committee. It is being elected in the way in which I am suggesting. They are producing reports against the government. They have produced many things which have brought out the government's errors, omissions and commissions.
You're watching a conversation with Mr. R. Venkataraman, former President of India. We'll be right back after a short break. Don't go away. Welcome back. We started off really, I was interested in what a former president does with his time and how he disengages from being at the apex of India in a sense. What do you do with yourself, with your time, after having experienced this great sense of, well, prestige, power and influence?
I write, I preach, I talk, but nobody is inclined to accept any of these things.
In some ways, are you circumscribed by your past? Are you limited by what you can say and what you do? Do you feel a sense of...
See, generally, the retired president does not comment on the current political situation. He doesn't. But then he is entitled to say what is constitutionally right.
If I could just go back to sort of your life today, you know, you've also been associated with many spiritual masters and groups, with the Shankaracharya. You've shared a stage with the Dalai Lama. What role does the spirituality play for you today?
A great deal, a great deal. There was one very great saint, the Paramacharya of Kanchi, a man senior previous to the present Acharya. He was a great scholar and he was a great saint, austere in his life, everything. Somehow I got attracted to him right from the age of 13, where my father used to be very close to the Acharya, and as a result of that I used to. On many things I have gone and consulted him what I should do.
To what degree does that personal philosophy, that personal ideology affect your functioning? And I'm looking sort of a relationship between the personal president and the personal dimensions of a president's beliefs and ideology and his formal workings. You could come from a particular ideological background and see, say, the carnage that happened in Gujarat in a different way, depending on what your worldview was. So how difficult do you find?
You can't, the president cannot. You see, you think the president is an omniscient person who knows everything, or omnipowerful person who controls everything. Nothing. He has certain functions under the Constitution. He has to discharge only that. The other things he just should shut up.
So what do you see then as the formal role of a formal president?
Very little. Very little. Except, you see, wherever, according to you, some correction is required, you come out with a... You deliver speeches in which you You give your ideas.
As we record this, it's Independence Day. What are your feelings? Where do you think India stands today as an independent country?
The present people of India have forgotten. They do not know the sufferings. They do not know the trials and tribulations which the freedom fighters underwent in those days, the losses they have suffered financially, economically, and so on. It's hard to believe that when you are beaten, you would not retaliate. I have seen with my own eyes the police atrocities on the freedom fighters, and not one of them retaliated. They suffered. It was Gandhiji's great influence on them that prevented them from retaliating. They were all real non-violent, you see, people. Today we have no idea what is non-violence.
Do you feel positive about India's future? There's so much talk of economic reform. There is a great sense, a feeling at least.
India has survived 3-4 millennia. Indian civilization is the only one prevalent now. The Egyptian civilization, the Babylonian civilization, Greek, Roman, everything had disappeared.
Do you have a dream, a vision for India?
Yes, I dream that it should be the greatest country in the world. It would be the greatest people in the world. But dreams and realities are very different.
How do you think that we could begin to change this? I mean, instead of just accepting that that's the way it is, where will change come from?
I am too small to make a change. There must be a Gandhiji again. He is the person who can.
Thank you very much, sir. This has been a great pleasure and a great honor. Thank you, sir.
Very much.
Thank you.
In Conversation was brought to you by Dabur Lal Toothpaste, Long Pudina Tomar, Taklifen Rakhe Dur.